Okay, Madam Chair, we are live.
Thank you.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Before we get started, as we are live, Julian, if you'd like to make a presentation, announcement for us about what we need to do to enable interpretation services.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Good evening, everyone. If you need interpretation services from English to Spanish, please select the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then select Spanish. Amelia, did you want to go ahead and interpret that?
Yes, hay interpretación disponible. Para acceder a la interpretación, seleccione el icono de globo a la parte de fondo de la pantalla y seleccione español.
Committee members, in the event that we have public comment in Spanish, you need to select the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then select English.
Para los miembros del comité, si hay una pregunta que es en español y si ustedes van a responder a la pregunta, tienen que oprimir el botón a la parte inferior de la pantalla para el inglés.
Thank you, Amelia. I will go ahead and turn on the interpretation now, and people can select the button. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the second meeting of the Redistricting Committee. We're so grateful that everyone's able to join us today, and we do have a full agenda following on what we promised to do from our first meeting. And so with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we have as I mentioned, a very full agenda. And are we sharing the agenda on our screen?
Madam Chair, we can. Our first item on the agenda is a staff presentation on the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, yes. And I just wondered if we could share it for the public to have, to know what we're doing just initially. So we do have we will be opening with a presentation on the Open Meetings Act, and Petra, who will be giving that presentation?
Madam Chair, that'll be my colleague, Julia Coldoon.
Okay. All right, we'll begin there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Couladon. I'm an associate attorney in the City Council Services Office. Thank you all for having me. I'm here to go over some basic information about the Open Meetings Act. And I'll just pull up a PowerPoint that we'll go through together quickly. Okay, can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. So first, what is the Open Meetings Act? This is a state law that does a few things. It defines the public policy of open government as it applies to all public bodies, including municipal governing bodies and most boards and commissions. It outlines procedures for conducting open meetings. It addresses the effect that violating the law may have on the validity of actions taken by public bodies, and it defines penalties for violation of the act. And this is what's known as a sunshine law, which is a type of law that requires public business to be conducted in full public view. And along those lines, the purpose of OMA is to ensure that the public has the greatest possible information regarding the actions of the government and the official acts of the officers and employees who represent the public. The act generally prohibits a public body from conducting public business in secret or in closed meetings, and requires that such business be conducted by the public body acting as a whole in meetings that are open to all persons who wish to attend. So when does the Open Meetings Act apply? The act applies to a meeting of a quorum of the public body that is held for the purpose of forming public policy, discussing public business, or taking action as it's authorized to do. And just very briefly, because I'm sure you know this piece already, a quorum is a majority of all members of the governing body, and it's required in order for the governing body to transact business. So when you have those two pieces, a meeting of a quorum that's held for the purpose of formulating policy, discussing public business, or taking official action, the Open Meetings Act requires that the meeting provide notice to the public, has an agenda available 72 hours in advance of the meeting, allows the public to attend and listen. The actions are documented in meeting minutes, and only closed meetings occur in very limited circumstances. And we'll go through each of these individually. First, notice. A notice must provide the date, time, and place of the meeting, and either include an agenda with it or provide instructions on how to get one. Notices need to be published and accessible to the public. And the AG recommends 10 days of notice ahead of a regular meeting, 3 days for a special meeting, and 24 hours in the event of an emergency meeting. Next, an agenda. This must be finalized and provided 72 hours in advance of the meeting. If you're having a Wednesday meeting like this one, the agenda would need to be published by the prior Friday. And the agenda should include a list of the items that will be discussed or acted upon. And it should be descriptive enough that the public's able to read it and understand the topics that are going to come up at that meeting. And unless there's some sort of an emergency, a public body can only act on the items that are listed on the agenda. The body can discuss other things just as a discussion, but it cannot take action unless it's listed as a specific agenda item. Next, public attendance. OMA requires that the public be allowed to attend and listen to the meeting. Reasonable accommodations must be provided when they're needed. And one thing to note is that OMA doesn't require a public body to allow members of the public to speak at meetings. That's not part of the act, but most public bodies here do allow time for public comment. Next, minutes. Public bodies subject to OMA are required to keep written minutes of all open meetings. The minutes must record at least the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of all members present, and a list of those that are absent, a statement of what items were considered, and a record of any decisions that were made and how each member voted. Draft minutes need to be prepared within 10 working days after the meeting occurs, and then they are then approved, amended, or disapproved at the next meeting. And all meeting minutes, including drafts, are subject to public inspection, which is sort of a whole other separate legal issue. And finally, closed meetings. I'm not sure that this will ever come up for you guys, but just to quickly touch on it so that you know that it exists. There are certain topics that a body may consider behind closed doors. This can be done in the middle of a public meeting, or an entire meeting can be closed, but there are extra procedures to follow, including some really important notice requirements. Next, failure to comply with OMA requirements. There is a presumption under the law that meeting requirements have been met, but in the event that it's found that a meeting was held or conducted in violation of the act, any action taken by the public body during that meeting is void. And the AG can also prosecute for violations, which is a misdemeanor punishable by a fine of no more than $500 for each offense. And the last thing I just wanted to go over was the issue of a rolling quorum, since I think this has come up as a specific question for you guys. So the Act's requirement for open public meetings applies to any discussion of public business among a quorum of members. So usually a quorum would meet together to discuss public business or take action in person. However, a quorum may exist even when members are not physically present together or at the same time or place. So the example I have here is that if 3 members of a 5-member board discuss public business in a series of phone, email, or text conversation, the discussion is a meeting of a quorum. And a rolling quorum violates the act because it constitutes a meeting outside of a properly noticed public meeting. Just as a general rule of thumb, it's better to keep conversations with your fellow members about redistricting contained to your public meetings. This would not apply to conversations that take place between a member and their alternate. And when in doubt, err on the side of caution to avoid even the appearance of a rolling quorum. And finally, here are a couple of links to some resources that might be of use to you. First, the New Mexico Attorney General has created a pretty comprehensive OMA compliance guide, which contains a ton of detail and goes down into the weeds if you're interested in looking at that. And it also contains examples of some scenarios that may come up. And then the second link here will take you to the act itself if you want to do some light reading and read the actual language of the law. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Julia. Does anyone have any questions? So you can address those now. If not, we'll move on in the agenda. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to note that I believe the presentation will be posted on the redistricting website as well.
Yes.
Madam Chair, this
Yeah.
is Member Buckholz.
Yeah.
I'm not finding my hand raising, so excuse me for interrupting. I did want to ask of staff, who is responsible for the committee's requirements under the Open Meeting Act in terms of minutes and in terms of posting agendas? Have we put that in place? Do we need to talk about that some more, or is staff prepared to say, here's how we intend to make sure that we follow those rules?
Madam Chair, I can answer that one. That'll be my responsibility. We have the agenda published on the Friday before. For the last two meetings, we have published that. We have the minutes prepared for the last meeting, and I need to double check the website to make sure we posted them. I have a sneaking suspicion we may have forgotten to do that. We'll certainly be posting those minutes ASAP for the last meeting, and this meeting we'll get those minutes up right away.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just didn't want anything to slip through the cracks on those kind of things.
Yeah, I realized listening to this presentation that all the things I added to the website after the last meeting, I think I forgot to add the minutes. So.
Thank you, Petra. Can you tell us just like when people can expect them to be up so they can start looking for them, the minutes of the meeting?
Yes, the minutes will be up. We usually get them done within the first 24 hours after the meeting. So those will be going up probably early on a Friday. They'll look a lot like the agenda and basically just be an agenda with notations in them that show if there are any motions, what that motion was, and then what the votes were, and then also who was present and who was absent.
Thank you. Member Buckholz, does that answer all your questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's very happy and pleased to hear those responses.
Thank you. In the more, like you'll see 3 dots that say more, raise hand should be there. And if staff will help me, if someone raises their hand to let me know, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so we'll go on to item B on the agenda, which is the last time we talked about communications with the public so that we can involve them in this process. And then also the public mapping platform. So we'll sit for a while for 2 presentations from staff and some committee discussion on District R, which is a public mapping platform. And I believe that presentation is coming from Research and Polling. And then we also have a draft communications plan that we'll be discussing. We'll start off with the District R public mapping platform presentation.
Great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Michael Sharp with Research and Polling. I believe also with RNP are Brittany and Brian. So as I go along and they feel the need to supplement what I've said or talked about, then I'd certainly encourage it. And then I'll go through the presentation, then we'll take any sort of questions. But at the last meeting, we were asked to take a look at public mapping platforms. And there are a number of different platforms out in the wild. And the one that was mentioned specifically by name is District R. So district with an R at the end, added at the end. And that's the one that the New Mexico Citizen Redistricting Committee used during its process last year. So there is some familiarity within the state. And in our conversations with them, they should be able to help out the committee and provide a site that will allow the public to create plans, and we'll have a gallery, and so everybody can see what plans have been created. And there are methods to sharing the plans as well. And so we looked at District R, looked at a couple other alternatives, and thought and felt that District R kind of met the best needs of the committee and the city, as well as the potential quick turnaround to be able to get this up and available to the public as quickly as possible. And so I guess with that, a quick introduction, I'll go ahead and just give you a brief demonstration of District R so you can get an idea of its abilities. And then afterwards, I'll kind of run through some questions or issues that the committee will probably want to address in terms of how to work with District R and how to use it in a public setting and during the meetings. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see here. So hopefully you see a browser, and it says tag draw EG. And so this is kind of a landing page for drawing plans online based on the district or platform. It's kind of the standard format. The intro at the beginning is basically anything that the city or the committee would want to put on there. You'll notice within the text, there is a link. If you clicked on it, there's a link. This is an example for, I think, whoops, sorry about that. Something happened there. For another city in California. And so you can put just about anything you want in this intro text. And what it does is it allows you to draw plans. You can see this little purple square. It allows you to draw plans. You can identify communities. So a community member could identify a specific part of the community they wanted to bring to the attention of the committee. You also have a public gallery, and you'll notice that every square or rectangle is a plan that's been submitted by the public or a community of interest. And so you can see this first one, vertical districts, everyone has an ID number. So if this is used by the committee and the public, the key number to look at is the ID number, because that's how all these plans are identified by, as well as some brief description. And you can see that there, for this particular entity, Elk Grove, a decent number of plans is submitted and shows load more plans, and you can basically load all the plans with the most recent plan being first, and the plan that's created the earliest shown last. And so I didn't really count these up, but there's a decent number of plans that have been submitted by the public. And so you can see just a quick description, an ID, and the date and time it was submitted. And this is available to anybody in the public, really anybody around the world. There's also a works in progress, which you can load drafts, but in essence, it's basically the same thing. And so, as you look at it, I tend to think that the public gallery section where official submitted maps are created is probably the place that people will most likely look at. And if the committee decides to use this platform, one thing to note is we can convert the districting concepts into this District R format and then post them as part of this gallery. There's at this moment, no real way to separate them, but at least on the gallery, but within the city website, next to each plan, there can be a direct link that links directly to that plan within District R. And it can also have the ID number. So there will be a way from the city's website to go directly to that plan that can be shown in District R. And then we can give some information about that. And so just real quick, I wanted to show you what happens and give you a brief description of what it will look like. And And so this is when you want to start a new plan, you come up with a blank map. And this is Elk Grove, and they base their districts on blocks. So all the lines you see are blocks. We use precincts, and you can kind of pan and zoom around. So if you zoom in a little bit, the streets will start popping up. You notice little tabs on the side says population. Well, this is blank. Once you start drawing the districts, this little table that's blank right now will stop populating with district number and some population info. And we have some various data layers, and I'll show you that in a moment. But let me go ahead and just give you a quick demo. So if we wanted to, say, draw District 1 in a little blue circle, you just basically take your little pen tool and start painting as if you're just painting a portrait or painting a picture. And as you hold down your mouse, it colors in the area to assign it to a particular district. And you notice as that's happening, that the data table on the right is automatically updating. So at this moment, there's 19,658 people within this district. It's a little bit less than the ideal pop of Elk Grove of 44,140 something. And you'll also notice that there's a deviation number. And oops, sorry about that. The deviation number is, it's telling us that district is a little bit too small. So it doesn't say negative, it's just telling you that district varies one way or the other by 55%. So as we continue drawing, that population number will continue to increase and we'll get closer and closer. You notice the deviation number is shrinking as we add more population. And so now that's a district. Now it's not a great district because there's some holes in there, but it just at least shows you that that district is at 0.12 of the ideal population. You can select another district by clicking on the little color symbol, and then you can draw in another district. So as you draw the district, all the numbers get updated again. We get really close, we'll just get that one. So we know that the total plan for all the maximum deviation of any given district is now at 4.4%. That's gonna be, you can, when you mouse over, it'll be District 2 in yellow. If you want to know what that district is, just without having to reference a number, you can go to this Data Layers tab and turn on the Show Numbering for the painted districts. It'll pop up the number, so it's easy to see what district you're looking at. And then you can also, within Districtor, you can add the current city council district line. So for Albuquerque, you can turn on a boundary that allows you to see the current district lines as a black line outline. And then as you have the districts, I'm not going to do all four for the sake of brevity. You can also click on the evaluation tab. It'll show you population by race for the total population and also voting age population. And you can compare and choose various racial and ethnic categories that the census has to show in the table. So here's it'll be non-Hispanic Asian voting age pop. The white, we can choose, say for that one to be Hispanic, this one to be Black using the census terminology. And you notice that the tables automatically populate and update on the bottom. And so as you create districts, this will be District 3, you'll notice that the numbers do update as I'm drawing the districts. So there's, let's see here. So I'll just do number 3. And another thing here is to look at, when you're looking at population, one of the key things for us when drawing the districts is to make sure that every I guess block is assigned. So let me just do something here real quick. I just changed my paintbrush size so it's really big. So now we have 4 districts. One is really, really large. But let's say you want to know if you missed a precinct, or in this case, a block. So what areas are unassigned? You notice that below the table, below the graph, you'll see that unassigned population, there's 4,800 people who haven't assigned to a district. So that's an issue. You need to take care of that. You need to make sure that every single geography is selected within the city, that you, in essence, counted everybody within your plan. And so you can turn on a little check mark that says highlight the unassigned areas, and then you can go in and kind of correct, if you will, the the areas and assign them. And then as you assign them, it automatically updates and the little red outlines go away. So that's basically Districtor. As you can draw around, you can pan, you can zoom in and out. You can easily assign areas to a district. For the city of Albuquerque, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. This population tab shows you the population. Data layers tab, we talked about that. You can turn the numbers on and off for the districts. And then the evaluation tab to show you the population of each. So how do we share this plan once you've finished it? You post it, if you will. There's a little button up here. It's called Save in the upper right. And once you click Save, it gives you some options. And the key here will be that at the end of each plan is a number. And that's and that one says, I can barely read that. I think it's 120802. And it's a URL. So it's just a web address, really. So every plan has a unique web address, and you can copy this to your clipboard. You can copy it and paste it into an email to send to somebody if you wanted to. You don't have to share it yet, but on the bottom, kind of the middle of this little dialog box is a share now. Is a work in progress. If you shared now, you'd give it a name, whatever you wanted it to be. If I could type, say draft. And I won't share this, but let's say you share this to the gallery. Your plan and that gallery that you saw earlier would say draft, and it would have city council districts and the date and time. If you use this work in progress, you'll notice it's save as draft. That will show up below the gallery. And then, so I won't do that now, but so this is where you would save it and post it to the gallery that we saw earlier. But like I said, you can always just copy it. And once you copy that plan, you can actually open a different tab and just go to that plan. So if you sent it to somebody else, then it would pop up on their screen just like this. Yeah, let's see. I think I wanted to make sure I got one back to the gallery. So let me get that link back on here. Accidentally closed it. So once you share the plan, it'll show up in this public gallery. So that vertical districts is the part, or it says vertical districts. That is what's filled in when you type in the team or plan name. So for example, if this were an official committee plan, it might say, yeah, I'm not sure, concept A. And the committee, we could decide upon what you wanted to put in there for any committee plan that's official and has been officially recognized or introduced to the committee. And so it's something like that. But that's the kind of information that would show up when I'll X out when you see it in the gallery. And with respect to public comment, if somebody wanted to comment on the plan, what they need to do is go to the City of Albuquerque website. If they really like the plan, they can say, oh, concept A, B, or C, if it's adopted by the committee. Or if they see a plan that somebody from the public has submitted, they could say within their comments, they can reference a particular ID number. They can go to the city's public site, go to the public comment section, and then let's see, maybe just paste the URL of the plan that they'd like the committee to consider. So with respect to this tool, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty straightforward to use. The data is based straight on the Census Bureau data. The assigning layers will be the precinct boundaries as opposed to block boundaries. So it'll allow somebody to assign precinct at the precinct level. As you look at this tool, some things to consider will be how is the committee going to, I guess, integrate this, assuming the committee votes to go forward, but how do you integrate this tool into your process? How do you handle plans that are submitted through Districtor? Who's going to evaluate them? Will the committee take an active role in, say, every day, just looking at the Districtor gallery and kind of panning through and scrolling through the sites and opening them up? How will the plans be evaluated? Who will evaluate them? If there's a plan that's been submitted to the gallery, I guess who will present that plan? In the New Mexico CRC process, what would happen was during a public forum, somebody who had created a plan would ask us to bring up that plan in Districtor, and then they would go ahead and describe it as we panned around and zoomed around. Though with Zoom, perhaps, but we could still do something like that. So we can bring the plan up as long as we have that ID number that can be shared with us. Is there going to be a process for the committee if you see a plan on the Districtor site within the gallery that you want to bring forth and consider it as an official concept? Then how are you going to make those sorts of decisions? What is that process going to be? So there's just a bunch of questions we had on our end that it's probably good for the committee to think about is how will you incorporate this tool into your process? Are you going to formalize it in terms of bringing plans forward and examining them and evaluating them and so on? And so hopefully that's a brief enough description of Districtor. And if Brittany and Brian had any other comments to add, go for it. And then I guess we can take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Michael, I just wanted to add one thing, if that's okay.
Sure.
So one of the benefits of bringing in the existing concepts that we've drawn into Districtor is that the user can take an existing plan and amend it and then save it as a new plan. Also, you don't have to start from scratch every time. So if someone sees like a conceptual plan that you all are considering but wants to just tweak it a little bit, that's possible in Districtor also. Just wanted to mention that.
And
right,
one other quick comment. During the state redistricting process, many well-meaning people submitted plans, and sometimes the population deviations fell beyond the range that was legally acceptable, or there were some issues regarding not creating a Hispanic majority district in an area where perhaps there should have been. And so there was also the role, as Michael was saying, of, in that case, research and polling, at least reviewing every plan, at least to see if it passed legal muster. And then you'd have to decide also, do you get back to those people and say, you've got this problem, you have 3 precincts that you were unassigned and need to be assigned, or do we fix that? So you have that issue too, where well-meaning people submit a plan. Also, sometimes they submit just their one district, and it's great to draw the perfect district that has implications on the neighboring districts. Sometimes we encourage them to also look at their neighboring districts as well. So those are all issues to consider.
Right. And Madam Chair and Brian, just to touch on what you said about maybe contacting a person who drew the plan if it wasn't complete. Within this particular platform, there's no way to know who submitted the plan. So that would just be something where if the committee kind of wanted to consider it, we'd have to at least make that known that plan ID, blah, 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 didn't quite meet these criteria because of these factors. And so I just wanted to bring that up real quick. But yeah, how do we evaluate plans that might not be contiguous, might go beyond the plus or minus 5% deviation, might have unassigned population and so on?
Right. This particular plan that Districtor is offering for cities is not nearly as robust as what they did for the state, but at the same time, they're willing to provide this service. The costs are reasonable. Michael and Brittany can get them all the data that they need to be able to set up the site in terms of our most recent precinct boundaries and precinct split issues as they relate to municipalities. So we would have to provide them with the data that they need to set up the site, but they've been very cooperative.
Right. And one other thing that Brittany mentioned, Madam Chair, was you can take an existing plan in the gallery, you can open it up, and you can modify it without changing the original plan. So if you've worked hours and hours and hours on a plan or whatever happens to be, you post it to the gallery, somebody opens it. So I can take this plan and I can really mess it up. but it doesn't affect the original plan. If I click on save, it actually creates a completely unique and separate URL, which I won't do here, but it won't have the same URL. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that we want to, discuss whether or not this is, we have some questions about the presentation, and then we would entertain a motion about how we want to move forward. But we do need to talk about some of the questions that were there. And I guess I'm wondering what the costs are. Do we know what the costs are, and is it within our budget to pay for it? Secondly, if you can tell us, you said that you looked at some other platforms that were out there, but you decided that Districtor was the best one, why that is, and if there's any logic in the program in terms of being able to tell people what rules they have to follow in order for it to comply and to pass legal muster.
Okay, Madam Chair, I think I'll take that last one first in terms of the rules to comply. Within that opening page, as you're drawing a plan itself, there's no real way to have those standards. So what you want to do with respect to using Districtor is maybe to add it into the language at the top somewhere, somehow, and say, well, these are the criteria that must be met. So equal population, deviation less than plus or minus 5%. All the districts should be contiguous, and no area should be unassigned. Those would probably be the three biggies. I mean, communities of interest are in the eye of the beholder. And if there are any standards with respect to the number of districts that are, say, majority Hispanic, majority minority, that could be decided upon by the committee, but sometimes some plans will have more and some will have less. With respect to, so that's where that information would go, kind of in this intro paragraph, and it could probably be put towards the top. So maybe it's one of the first things that people see, but it'll be amongst this level of information. But the other two districting platforms, I think one of the reasons why we liked Districtor is because there is some familiarity on our end, to be frank, and we understand how to use it and how to explain it and use it within a public setting. The ability to easily have a gallery was also critical to us. I think Days Redistricting didn't really have just a gallery that's super easy to use and at all. I don't think they had a gallery at all. They might have, but I may have missed it. And so if it was hard to find, then it could be hard to use. And with the other one, they did have a gallery, but it was very controlled in terms of anything that was posted had to be vetted by the organizer or the committee. And so we felt that having a more open process to just allow people to submit plans without this necessarily having been vetted, but just to say, hey, this is something I'd like the committee to consider was important. And also the turnaround time for District R is pretty quick. They've committed to doing this within 2 weeks. So before your next meeting. And so I guess for those primary reasons, that's why we chose Districtor. It seems to provide all the information we need, provides a way to easily post the plans in a gallery that anybody can see without having any sort of firewall or username or password. Just you can go in and you can look at the plans, and it's relatively straightforward to share the plans. Kind of once you get used to it, but so those are the primary reasons.
And I'm sorry, Madam Chair and Michael, one other reason sort of against Dave's redistricting is that they don't have the newest precincts. We did a lot of precinct work, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but that's my understanding. We did a lot of sort of splits, especially in Albuquerque, to deal with some population issues. And Districtor actually worked with us through the state redistricting process to make sure that all of the precincts have been updated in Districtor. So that'll make it easier to export to our mapping tool that has some different analytic capabilities.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure, Brittany. That's great, Brittany. Because we did a lot of change, and so we can give Districtor the exact geographic data that we need, and they will use what we provide to them. And so we know it will be accurate.
And I think that, I'll open it up. I don't see any hands raised for questions from other committee members, but I would like to know, I think you said that the gallery maps are not attributable to a specific person, why that is, and if that can be remedied so that we know who the map came from. Is it possible to do that? And then I'd like to know about the cost.
Madam Chair, so to my knowledge, when we talked to the districtor, they said this is pretty much out of the box what we get. There's no real modification to it. If there were, it would, that what happened with New Mexico CRC, that was basically a custom application that was built on this. So you have the gallery, and then they kind of integrated this gallery into a custom application. And honestly, I don't know how long it took them, but it had to have taken more than a couple of weeks. And but it did allow a more robust way for folks to type in their contact information and type in their name. And even if somebody typed in their name, the name didn't have to be their name. It could have, I think there was the various Center for Civic Policy just used the Center for Civic Policy on the plans they submitted. There was another person, Megan Richardson, who we know is not that person's real name. So, I mean, even just given that, but most people, put their real name. But, as far as I know, from what the districtor folks said, what we see, what I showed on the screen is what we get with very little room for modification.
And Madam Chair and Michael, we sort of hope that we can sort of link this to the comment page on the city's website and have people sort of have an explanation and be able to link their district or map in that way, which isn't perfect, but it's a way to, if people want maps attributed to them, it's a way to identify themselves.
Right, and Madam Chair, maybe that could be a committee policy that if the committee wants to consider any particular plan that's been submitted, then the person who drew it must come forward and at least introduce it to the committee. That could be one way to handle that situation.
And then in terms of the cost, Madam Chair, so the districtor folks are doing this sort of out of the box for $2,500. And Petra can speak more to this, but that does seem to be within the budget for the committee.
Madam Chair, thank you, Brittany. Yes, so I checked in with our staff. We have quite a tight budget associated with this. The budget that we have associated with this is already dedicated to research and polling. However, because the district costs are so low and the potential anticipated additional time to consider any extra maps that get generated out this for research and polling's time, the totals that comes to is enough that we can find it through looking at salary savings and other stuff like that at council. We're anticipating that this is going to cost us an extra between $5,000 and $10,000. And we're hoping that it doesn't really go beyond that, because that's about all we've got to be able to spend on this. So that was another thing that made Districtor quite attractive, is the nominal, how effective the tool was in terms of ease of use for the public, the fact that research and polling would be able to share the latest data layers that they have in terms of the precincts, and then how easily it integrates with the city's webpage and the comment page. So all of those were big bonuses for us in terms of recommending them as a choice to the committee.
And does this satisfy our commitment to provide the shape files to the public?
So that would be a different approach. We could do that as well, or we could do it instead of this. I think that what Districtor offers is a more, I'm trying to think of the right word.
User-friendly?
Thank you. Yes, user-friendly approach than shapefiles. If we just provide the shapefiles, somebody has to know how to use GIS and have access to a GIS tool. With this one, all you really need is an internet connection and some comfort level with just using a basic website platform. That presentation, I watched it and I feel like, oh, I could go and have a go at drawing a couple maps and submitting something. And I'm not a particularly tech savvy individual.
Okay. Does any other member of the committee have a question about this? We do want to allow members to ask questions if you have more questions. If not, I would entertain a motion about whether or not we want to move forward with this, with District R.
Madam Chairman, I have a question, not a question, but a statement.
Go ahead.
I've developed many databases over the years, and if we spend $4,500 for this program, it's well worth it, and it's a minimal cost. And just looking at it based on Michael's demonstration, then I think it's definitely well worth it. That's basically all my comment, and I would support purchasing this software.
Madam Chair, I wanted to ask a question and also give some appreciation for Michael and also Brittany and Brian walking through the platform. I had a chance to look at a few of the other platforms that were suggested in the last public comment, and it doesn't seem like they offer us the granularity we need. The fact that District R is willing to build this for CABQ in some way and frame in precinct information seems like this is the best choice. I had a specific question about non-census data. It seemed, Michael, you mentioned there's not a lot of customized or customizable options here, not a lot of room for customization. I'm wondering about non-census data being imported to allow either the public or folks on this committee to map using those kinds of visualizations. Have you ever seen that with District R? And if not, would research and polling be able to supplement some of that to show us what it might look like to have non-census demographic data used to give us a different view of the city?
Madam Chair and Member Kellerman, I'll take the shot at the first part, and maybe Brittany can address the other methods we can use to share data. But I guess the short answer is no, in terms of Districtor adding non-census data and specifically non-redistricting data to their platform is literally just the data found in the redistricting data set. And we did specifically ask them that question of whether or not they could integrate other layers. The best that they can do is add outlines. And so as part of the presentation, I showed how we can toggle the current districts on and off as thin black lines. And so if there were other layers like that, with just the outline, but there's no, you can't really display any data along with that or any labels on the map or anything like that. So really, I guess it wouldn't be possible on the Districtor site to handle any of the non-census data, I think the way that you'd like to see.
And Madam Chair, member, I can supplement that. And I think Member Kellerman, this might be interesting to you. The Districtor, the problem is that most of the socioeconomic data that we have is at the tract level, and Districtor can only sort of work in one level, which is the precincts, and so building districts by precincts, and so having a different level of geography with all the other data, it just doesn't. It sort of would kill their program. We have mapped some of that socioeconomic data onto our, what we use to draw the maps. And so, we're happy to share that. And, if the committee, sees fit to direct us, some of those PDF maps, we could look at adding some data layers onto those. If we wanted to do like a base layer of socioeconomic data, that would be an additional sort of amount of time and work. But if that's something that's important to the committee, we could talk about doing that for sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael and Brittany.
Madam Chair, Member Stoll.
Go ahead.
The comment I would make is someone mentioned, I think as far as configuration control, it would be a good point that if we see one of these different maps that we do like, that whoever the individual or organization that put this together, that initially they bring this forward and own it for us to look at, and they present it to us from their viewpoint, and then we can take it and work with it. But I think that would be a good configuration control point for us.
Agreed, and I'm thinking that in the descriptions at the very beginning that we can ask people when they're naming their maps to associate them and give them the process for how they can associate them and own them. Is that correct, Michael?
Madam Chair, so if I think I understood the question in that intro paragraph on the, I guess, the landing page for District R, just to describe in there what the process will be if they want that map to be considered by the committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm saying that that's something that we can describe for people so they know what the process is, correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair. That what we put in the information at the top of the page is completely up to us.
Thank you. And then I guess we want to find out from the committee how we are going to allow, let's say we got an additional 5 maps, concepts to look at. How would we bring those forward? How do we want to bring those to the process to be considered? Anyone have any comments about how we might do that?
Madam Chair, this is Petra. I don't know if the committee members have some thoughts, but one option would be the way that the agendas are scheduled. We have public comment occurring before the committee discussion. And so at each meeting, during the public comment period, we could ask, the committee members could ask the public if they have any maps to present. And when somebody raises their hand to speak, that would be their opportunity to say, you know, good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Petra. I've drawn Albuquerque map 123. I'd like to present that to the committee. Here's why I think map 123 is brilliant. And that would be a way for you guys to have maps introduced to you. Another alternative would be if somebody submits it as part of the written comments that we receive, and they could post that into the written materials. And then when we get to the committee discussion, you could either say, I'd like to revisit, Albuquerque map 123 that Petra presented, or you could reference maps that were presented to you through the written submissions. And then with the committee discussion being at the end of the meeting, you as a committee can bring up whichever ones have caught your attention and that you wish to discuss further.
Thank you. And I heard from research and polling that we wanted to have maybe an initial vetting process to determine whether or not the maps met the minimum qualification. Correct. Okay. Are there any other questions about Districtor? And if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to go ahead and implement that as a public mapping platform for this process.
So moved.
Moved by Member Romero, seconded by Member Segura. Is there any discussion? If not, I believe that we are polling. So Petra, if you'll poll the membership to see if we're how we vote.
Madam Chair, I will read out each committee member and the district associated with them as I call out the names. So Council District 1 Committee Member Segura.
Yes.
Council District 2 Committee Member Romero.
Yes.
Council District 3 Committee Member Quesada.
Yes.
Council District 4 member Reynolds.
Yes.
Council District 5 committee member Aragon.
Yes.
Council District 6 committee member McGill.
Yes.
Council District 7 committee member Kellerman.
Yes.
Council District 8 committee member Buckles.
Yes.
And Council District 9 committee member Pasco.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes on a 9-0.
Great. Thank you all so much. Our next item on the agenda is about the communications plan submitted to us by staff. And I believe, Petra, you're going to present that.
Yes, Madam Chair. So we emailed out and put on the website a draft version of a communications plan for you. Overall, the communications plan is pretty heavily based on our website. It is the council staff's intention to provide as much information as possible on that website. The website includes information about each meeting. The agenda goes up there on the Friday at the same time as you guys will be receiving it via email. It includes the Zoom link information. After the meeting, it will have any presentations, the minutes in future, as well as the video of the meeting, and any other materials that weren't provided prior to the meeting. The maps all go up on the project website. We have a short URL so that it's easy for the folks to forward, which is www.cabq.gov/2022 redistricting. We have a fair amount of activity on Twitter. My colleague Julian is pretty active on there, and so we will be regularly putting information on our Twitter page about this, as well as we have a events page on the city's page, which the media follow pretty regularly. Each meeting will have its own events page. It includes a link to the agenda, and we'll also be adding the project website. So these are all ways for the public to follow along, but also committee members, if you're out and about and talking with constituents, to provide people quick and easy access to one location that has all the information. We'll also, given the vote just now, we'll also be over the next 2 weeks adding the links to Districtor and that public mapping opportunity. Are there any questions about our communications plan? For, excuse me, or recommended revisions?
I think it's pretty straightforward. However, you know, I am interested in making sure that the public is aware of this process and they know exactly what it's about. And so this seems like it is straightforward. It's what we always do. And I guess I'd like us to see if there's something we can do that's different than what we always do. One thing that I saw on social media, you know, just sort of making sure that we get some stuff out on Facebook, on Instagram, on some of those places that, you know, if we have any budget to sponsor, just to try to get more public input about this process. Any other committee members have any questions or comments?
I think Committee Member Casada has a hand up.
Yes, go ahead.
To kind of piggyback off what you said, Madam Chair, Facebook, I was wondering if there's any way we can also include Facebook. Many of my community members don't really utilize Twitter. And so, but they are on Facebook, especially some of my older community members. And I was wondering if that would be a possibility.
Madam Chair, I will check in with Julian, who is our office PIO, and look into whether we can get something up on Facebook and what that might look like.
Thank you. Member Casada, does that satisfy?
Madam Chair and Ms. Morris, if you don't mind, one thing we can, because City Council doesn't have their own kind of general Facebook page, but the Office of Neighborhood Coordination does. So that may be a good way for us to get information out through Facebook. I know they have a pretty good following. And so we can look in to working with ONC on that, on providing information through some of their means. And that includes their weekly newsletter. The meeting notifications will start going out through their newsletter as well. But that might be an idea how we can capture the Facebook audience.
Thank you, Madam Chair Julian. That would be great. Like I said, I have older community members in my district, and they prefer to use Facebook. I'm not sure if they're familiar with Twitter as much, and anything that we can do to make this process more accessible to our community members, the better.
Thank you. And I see Member Kellerman, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to recommend that we add an email subscription form to the website. Hopefully that wouldn't be much effort to add that to the page, and it would link to a simple database. Those emails would be sent out using existing city platform resources, and it shouldn't be a duplication or it should be a duplication of effort. It shouldn't be an additional email draft or package similar to what's being sent out with agenda updates, public comments, just a summary package of activities since the last meeting. If members of the public could sign up for those updates, I think it would maintain and increase consistent engagement and participation in this process. So I'd like to recommend that as an addition to the communications plan, and using whatever existing city resources are already in motion so it doesn't add to the budget.
Staff, is that doable?
Madam Chair, yes, we'll certainly look into that. That's something that Julian or I will get rolling and we can look into for sure.
Great. Member Reynolds.
Madam Chair, my only comment is on your communications plan, can you add all of these different social media reach out programs you're going to do with those URLs or links, and or put it in the minutes so that as our minutes are read, that people can, even if they go and find it, they can click on it and go right to it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Committee Member Reynolds. So we had on the agenda the communications plan as an action item, but I think given the vote, the positive vote on Districtor and the recommendations that you guys are making this evening, that we defer action on the communications plan, that we come back to you next meeting with an updated version that has some information on Facebook and this email distribution list and these various links.
Petra, is it not possible for us? I mean, those seem like pretty simple things to do. Is there something that you need to figure out about what we can do so we could just move forward with those additions?
Yes, actually, well, an alternative would be if there aren't other recommendations that you could make an motion for the communications plan to be updated with those items and then published.
Yes. So I think we want to move forward and not wait another 2 weeks to do it.
Okay.
If other members of the committee don't have any other questions, if we could entertain a motion with the additions that we stated here to the draft communications plan, do we want to approve it? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mark Reynolds.
Second.
Member Quesada, second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll poll the committee.
So Council District 1, Committee Member Segura.
Yes.
Council District 2, Committee Member Romero.
Yes.
Council District 3, Committee Member Quesada.
Yes.
Council District 4, Committee Member Reynolds.
Yes.
Council District 5, Committee Member Aragon.
Yes.
Council District 6, Committee Member McGill.
Yes.
Council District 7, Committee Member Kellerman.
Yes.
Council District 8, Committee Member Buckles.
Yes.
Council District 9, Committee Member Pasco.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes on a 9-0.
Great. Thank you so much. So I think we're setting a precedent here. We're moving on to research and polling, mapping concepts. Next thing on the agenda, the presentation of 5 concept maps. We did have the opportunity. The PDFs of those maps are up on the website. Everyone has access to. We're going to have those presented now, and then we'll have discussion and public comment at 6:40. And so we should have time for for member discussion and from the community about these concept maps. So with that, research and polling.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Brian Sanderoff, as you know, with Research and Polling. And tonight, Brittany Poss, the Director of Data and Analytics at Research and Polling, will be doing 2 pretty basic things. One, we'll briefly recap the major principles of districting to remind you, as well as also new members of the public who perhaps did not attend the first meeting, and some quick population statistics of the current city council districts and the challenges that we face. And then second, Brittany will present 5 map concepts of the city council districts for your consideration. Now, why did we develop 5 concepts, A, B, C, D, E? We did it to show you different approaches to redistricting of these city council districts. Hopefully that it will then gauge a reaction from you and gauge a reaction from the public about what you like and don't like, or maybe you like part of this plan and part of that plan, what have you. So we intentionally are showing different approaches, some more change-oriented than others, to gauge your reaction so that then we will make future adjustments to the maps that you like based on your direction and the direction from the public. Now, these maps have been posted on the city's website for public review, and also included on the website and provided to you was a brief memo that explained a few of the major issues that we're facing when adjusting the city council district boundaries. And I think that provides some good perspective. And I'm just going to touch on 2. Brittany's going to get into much more detail. As we discussed 2 weeks ago, the city council district boundaries must be adjusted so that they're substantially equal in population, and that the west side has experienced unequal population growth, so that the west side population must shed some population to the other side of the Rio Grande. The second issue I wanted to remind you of that's important is that the contiguity issue, and that is that precincts within a district must be contiguous, which basically means they must touch each other, at least in some points in space, so that a district that crosses the Rio Grande must do so in an area in which the city boundaries are contiguous between the east side and the west side of the river. Just can't cross willy-nilly like the county commission did or the state legislature did, because they were not constrained by the city municipal boundary limits. So this narrows some of our options with Brittany, which Brittany will review. And finally, redistricting maps obviously do have an impact on incumbent councilors who are currently representing these districts. And so these map concepts have more of an impact on the incumbents on some of the maps compared to other maps, which I'm sure we'll discuss that as well. Now, the city council resolution that establishes your rules does stipulate that you may consider the residence of incumbents when recommending plans to the city council. So some maps have some pairings, some maps don't. It's done for reasons It's your option how much to weigh these issues that we just discussed. And with that, Madam Chair, ready to turn it over to Brittany to present the 5 concepts, if that's okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brian. I'm going to share my screen here. So we thought we could just go really briefly over the concepts that we discussed at the last meeting, just to do some level setting and make sure that we're all on the same page. Just really briefly, the 5 principles of redistricting are equal population, minority voting rights, contiguity, compactness, and communities of interest. Again, equal population, the idea is that all districts are equal in population, the idea going back to 1 person, 1 vote. We calculate the ideal district population, the ideal population for each district by taking the total population according to the 2020 census for the entire city, and then dividing that by the number of districts, which, as you know, is 9. That gets us the ideal population. There's some leeway in the law. New Mexico requires that cities like Albuquerque stay within plus or minus 5% of that ideal population. And so every plan that we show you tonight is going to be within that plus or minus 5% of the ideal district population, depending on sort of the other goals that we're trying to reach, the other objectives that we're aiming for with the plan. We might get close to that allowable population deviation, but we've stayed within the law on that. Next is minority voting rights. And again, this is the idea that we're drawing districts that are careful not to dilute the voting strength of communities of color, that are giving communities of color the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. All of the plans that we show tonight have 3 majority Hispanic voting age population districts. And I'll talk about each one. Some plans, those majority minority districts are stronger than others, and we can talk about the pros and cons of those. Again, the VRA covers all ethnic and language minorities, but we're only required to draw those VRA districts where communities of color are large enough to constitute a majority in the district and vote together as a block. And then again, as we talked about before, there's a prohibition on race as the predominant factor in redistricting, subverting the other principles of redistricting. That's considered a racial gerrymander. Contiguity, as Brian mentioned, contiguity is just the idea that all parts of the district are connected in geographic space, that there's no sort of islands of population within one district. Compactness, it's about how a district is distributed around its center, that, districts aren't sprawling. They don't look like snakes or pencils. They look like sort of compact shapes around their geographic center. And then communities of interest, that we identify groups or areas with shared characteristics like language, lived experience, economics, and that we draw districts that don't divide those communities. And again, the public is really useful in helping us identify communities of interest. Hopefully we'll get some people drawing some really beautiful communities through Districtor that we can consider. And again, just as a note, there is no perfect district or districting plan. Often these principles can be in tension with one another, and we just sort of try to balance them and prioritize them as will best serve the community of Albuquerque. And then again, just as a recap, we have the sort of general principles of districting, and then your authorizing legislation has some rules, things that you have to consider, things you may consider, and things that you can't consider when drawing districts. So your authorizing legislation requires that the districts you draw be contiguous, be relatively compact with as few geographic extremes as possible, that they're an attempt to preserve the communities of interest, that they adhere to existing precinct lines, and they follow constitutional principles around the Voting Rights Act. Every plan that we have developed as sort of concepts and points of discussion do all of these things. again, communities of interest are tough because it's in the eye of the beholder. And so we can have some discussions about whether or not we're, protecting the right communities of interest, or, how we sort of deal with that. But in terms of contiguity and compactness and, not splitting precincts, all of the plans that we show you are doing those. And then your authorizing legislation says that you may consider preserving the core of existing districts. And so some of the plans that we talk about tonight keep the core of existing districts, and some concepts that we're going to show are more change oriented. And so, you all get to decide how much weight you put on preserving the core of existing districts and sort of those minimal change plans. And then you're also allowed to consider the residents of incumbents if you want. And as Brian said, there are some plans that we'll talk about tonight that do pair some sitting city council members. And that's not done lightly. We don't do it just to do it. We sort of want to talk about what happens if lines are drawn certain ways. And sometimes that means that incumbents are paired. And so you all get to decide what to do with that information. And then again, you're prohibited from using any partisan data. So we're not going to show any of that. None of these conceptual plans were drawn using partisan data. So we are hopefully safe there. And Madam Chair, unless there's any sort of lingering questions about the principles of redistricting, we can jump right into looking at the current districts and then talking about those conceptual plans.
I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, great. Thank you. I wanted to sort of start by looking at the current districts. And so that should be what you're seeing on your screen now. You see the 9 council districts and the existing municipal boundaries. You can see, hopefully you all can see my cursor. You can see I-40 running through the middle here. This is I-25 coming down. This is the river. You can see the South Valley, Paradise Hills. This is downtown. This is the university area, just to give us an idea of sort of where we are. So what you'll see here in the labels is the district number, and then below that is the deviation from the ideal population. And remember, we talked about the ideal population being the total population of the city divided by 9. And for the city of Albuquerque, that ideal population is 62,727 for each district. And so this percentage is the percentage difference from that ideal population that each of these districts are. And we looked at this last time, so this is just a recap. But as a reminder, District 5 here in the far west side is too large. So it's 15, almost 16% over the ideal population. And so that's going to need to shrink and to lose population to another district. Districts 8 and 6 are too small. Those are going to need to grow and pick up some population. And again, all of the other districts, District 1, 3, 2, 4, 7, and 9 are within that plus or minus 5% allowable deviation from the ideal population. But it's likely that those districts, and you'll see as we go through the conceptual plans, are affected by moving the boundaries to account for population in the other districts. Now, again, the big issues that we see here are the cumulative deviations west and east of the river. So again, on the west side, we have about 14,000 too many people over here on the west side. This is where most of the population growth in the city has happened. And so there's like 23% of a council seat too many people on the west side, and correspondingly about 23% of a council seat too few people here on the east side of the city. So what that means is that at least one east side district is going to have to cross the river to pick up some of that west side population. And as Brian mentioned, there's a contiguity issue here, which is that there's a really sort of limited geographic space within municipal boundaries to cross the river from the east to the west side of the city. And this is where it is. So we're looking at I-40 here in the north, Central here in the south, and then just a little bit south of Central. This is the only place where a district can cross from the east side to the west side. So all of the plans that you see tonight that we're presenting just as bases of discussion will have a district crossing over the river at some point in this sort of little land bridge between the east and west sides of the city within the municipal city limits. I also want to note, we talked a little bit about this last time, that in the current districts, there are 2 majority Hispanic voting age population districts. That's District 1 and District 3. District 2 was a majority Hispanic voting age population district when it was drawn, but it's since dropped below 50% Hispanic. Again, all of the plans that we've drawn so far have 3 majority Hispanic voting age population districts, and I'll identify those to you as we go along. And then I just want to echo what Brian said in his introduction. These are conceptual plans. These are really just intended to sort of see what's possible with the population of Albuquerque and sort of the geographic and sort of population realities that exist. And we see our job as sort of presenting different viable options just to spark discussion. So it's just a starting point, and we're happy to make revisions. It's not like you have to pick from one of these 5 conceptual plans. And so with that, I'd like to pull up Concept A, which is the first of these conceptual plans that we've put together. So again, Concept A, the objective of Concept A was a minimal change plan to sort of keep all of the cores of existing districts and only adjust the boundaries as needed for population changes. So we'll start up here looking at District 5, which is, you'll recall, had the highest deviation and needed to lose population. So what we've done here is, I'm going to actually turn on the current boundaries, and so you can see that in the green and white. So these are the current boundaries between District 5 and District 1, currently at Montano. And under Concept A, to deal with the excess population in District 5, we moved that boundary from Montano, we moved it north to this escarpment that's just south of the Petroglyphs Estates. So there's this bluff here, and all of the folks on sort of the top of the bluff are in District 5, and all of the folks below are in District 1. And then it follows here Butterfield Trail to Golf Course. And then there's a drainage ditch here that's south of the Rancho Sereno neighborhood, and then goes to the current boundary along Coors and Paseo. And so that's how Concept A deals with the excess population in District 5. On the south end, we have District 2 crossing the river north of Central and south of I-40 to Coors. And so basically this is Pat Hurley neighborhood, and West Mesa neighborhood goes into District 2, goes into this east side district. District 1 then south of I-40, the eastern boundary is Coors, and then it goes to Central, west of Coors and south of I-40. Under Concept A, we did not change any of the boundaries with respect to District 3. District 4 is also the same boundaries as current, and District 9, we didn't have to touch those boundaries either. District 2 on the east side, so it crossed the river and took some population here, and so we had to lose some population on the east side. So you can see District 2 used to cross I-25 here and go all the way to Carlisle. Here we have District 2 staying completely west of I-25 to Gibson, and just retaining the Kirtland Addition and the UNM South Golf Course. Between Gibson and this is Indian School, this piece goes into District 6. So this is basically like where the pit is. And then up here is University West, which has Carrie Tingley Hospital and the UNM Children's Campus, and that University Satellite is how I always think of that little chunk of area. So that moves from District 2 to District 6 under Plan A. Then District 7, also in the northern part of District 2, it takes this little piece south of Montano and west of the freeway from District 7, just to sort of straighten out this line along the freeway. And this is actually where Topgolf is, just to sort of orient us. District 7 then is stays completely east of I-25 and then comes south of I-25 to take the North Campus area here. So this is the North Golf Course and North Campus. This is Carlisle. Now goes into District 7 under Concept A, and the rest of District 7 and the boundary between 7 and 6 is the same as it is today. District 8, as you'll recall, needed a little extra population. And so what we've done is we've just, under Concept A, moved the boundary from Montgomery to Comanche between Wyoming and Eubank, and put this neighborhood here into District 8 from District 7. And like I said, this has 3 solidly majority Hispanic voting age population districts. So District 1 is 53% Hispanic voting age population, District 3 is 80%, and District 2 is 56% Hispanic voting age population. So those are pretty solid majority minority districts under Concept A. Next, we will go to Concept B. And Concept B is pretty similar to Concept A, where this is just a different way to think about crossing over the river. Again, to take that excess population from the west side. So what's happening here is, rather than District 2 crossing the river north of Central and south of I-40, the crossing stays south of Central. So we're just crossing south of Central to Coors, taking this Alamosa neighborhood and putting it into District 2. So to account for that, actually up here, the boundary between District 1 and 5 is really similar to Concept A. Because District 3 is losing that Alamosa neighborhood, the northern boundary to District 3 moves up to I-40. So the northern boundary is I-40 and the southern boundary, or the eastern boundary, is Coors under Concept B for District 3. And then District 1 comes and retains that Pat Hurley, West Mesa neighborhood. District 2 isn't taking quite so much of the west side, so we can sort of keep where it crosses I-25 a little bit closer to current. So again, I'm going to turn on the current district boundaries. And so you can see that here, green and white. And so now everything from Central to Buena Vista to Yale is all in District 2. District 6 is coming in and picking up this is the Spruce Park neighborhood. And again, that West University area with Carrie Tingley. We see District 7 looking the same as it does under Concept A, District 8 looking the same under Concept A. And again, we didn't touch the boundaries of District 4 or District 9 in Concept B. So, and I'm sorry, a note on the Hispanic voting age population districts. Again, District 1, 2, and 3 are pretty solidly Hispanic voting age population majority districts under Concept B. So Concept C is again an alternative way to look at crossing the river from the east side to the west side. In
Brittany?
This, yes.
But doesn't Concept B also eliminate the current counselor from the district?
Yes, so Concept B does, so these red stars, I'm pulling Concept B back up again. The red stars are the residences of the incumbents. And so yes, the incumbent from District 3 is now in District 2 under Concept B. And that's, we again did not set out to pair any incumbents. This is just what happens when you only cross the river south of Central. This is just what happens. But yes, thank you
In,
for pointing that
in,
out.
in concept A, there were no changes of the current incumbents.
That's correct. In concept A, there's no pairing of incumbents.
Yeah, that was Member Buckles. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to concept C. So again, concept C, the idea was to, continue thinking about the best way to have a district from the east side cross over the river to the west side. And here, what we were thinking is, how do we sort of maximize representation in that east side district? How do we maximize west side representation in that east side district? And so what we've done here is we have District 2 crossing the river, both north and south of Central to Coors. And so we have sort of the biggest chunk we can get of the west side in District 2. And the idea is that then a larger proportion of District 2 is made up of west side constituents. Again, just to sort of see what would happen and spark discussion. So again, District 2 is crossing the river to Coors. District 3 looks the same as it does in the in concept B. So the northern boundary is I-40, the eastern boundary is Coors. So District 1 is held completely along its southern boundary at I-40. And so it's not taking any population south of I-40, which means that it needs to go a little further north into District 5. And so the way we've done that is this boundary looks really similar to concept A, which is along that escarpment. But instead of coming along Butterfield Trail, we're here at Calle Norteña, and then up to Golf Course, and then straight across Paseo. Under concept A, this neighborhood here is in District 5. Under concept C, this neighborhood is in District 1. And that's again to account for the population of not having District 1 cross I-40 at all. So on the east side of District 2, we're able to keep District 2 completely east of I-25. And actually District 6 ends up needing to cross I-25 and take some of the San Jose neighborhood from District 2 to make the population work out. And so this is, District 6 is coming along, this is Anderson to Broadway, to San Jose, to Williams, to Woodward, and then a ditch to the city limits. And just to orient us, this is South San Jose Park, which would end up in District 6 under concept C. So District 2, again, is completely west of I-25. Let's see, and then District 6 doesn't go quite so far north here. So we're keeping District 6 along Central and then up University to essentially Lomas. So basically the Spruce Park neighborhood under concept C is going into District 7. And then the main campus of UNM is remaining in District 6. District 9 and District 4, again, are the same as the current districts and the same as concept A. District 8 needed to come and pick up a little more population from District 7 because District 7 is going further down into the university area. So District 8, under concept C, the boundary moves from Montgomery to Candelaria between Wyoming and Eubank under concept C. And that gets District 8 a lot closer to the ideal population. Here, we still have 3 majority Hispanic districts, but District 1 is only 50.5% Hispanic voting age population. So it's not a super strong majority minority district. District 2, though, becomes 60% Hispanic voting age population, and District 3 is 78% Hispanic voting age population. And again, as the members noted, anytime we cross the river south of Central to Coors, the sitting incumbent for District 3, it gets moved into District 2. But that's the only incumbent pairing in concept C. So everything that we've looked at so far, I'm going to pull up concept D, has made minimal changes to the east side of the city. Basically we haven't touched District 4, District 9. And so we wanted to have a conceptual plan to think about that reimagines the east side of the city a little bit. And I also want to note that in the maps that were posted to the website and that were sent out to the committee, there's one small precinct error between District 8 and 4, and I'll just point that out to you when we get there. But we'll get you amended maps. There's just one precinct that was not in the right spot. So here what we've done is on the west side, Districts 5, 1, and 3 are the same as in concept A. We have District 2 crossing the river north of Central, south of I-40 to Coors. And that leaves the incumbent from District 3 in her district. This District 3 is the same as it is under the current plan. But District 2 stays completely all the way west of I-25. And to do that, it pushes a little bit north. So I'm going to turn on the current boundaries. It's currently at Montano. And to keep District 2 completely west of I-25, we pushed north to Paseo del Norte. And so what we're looking at here, this is where the movie theater is. The Hyatt Pyramid that you can see from the freeway is up in here. Incidentally, Research and Polling's office is here. So that's sort of what we're looking at going into District 2 from District 4 under Concept D. District 6, its eastern boundary would be kept completely along I-25. Still, like Concept A, it would take in this University West where that University satellite is, but it would come all the way down, taking the Kirtland Addition and the UNM South Golf Course all into District 6. To account for that population, then on the east side of District 6, this eastern boundary here is held at Wyoming. This allows us to keep the international district whole in District 6, but it doesn't go quite so far up into East Central. So here's where it gets a little bit different from what we've seen before. District 9 becomes this sort of Four Hills district. So we've kept District 9. So this is the Four Hills area, and this is Juan Tabo. And so District 9 stays basically east of Juan Tabo after Central, all the way to Montgomery. And this is actually Del Norte High School, sorry. El Dorado, I knew it wasn't Del Norte, it's El Dorado High School here. So basically from the foothills to El Dorado, and then from Juan Tabo to the city limits in the foothills is all this foothill district in District 9. And then District 8 then can become this sort of Far Heights district. The southern boundary here follows, so this is Montgomery, this is Juan Tabo following Spain. This is where that little precinct issue was. So in the maps we sent you, we had this boundary at Osuna, but it should be at Spain. So we're holding Spain all the way from Juan Tabo to Wyoming, and then this is San Antonio. So this really becomes this sort of Far Heights all the way up to the county line, which is also the city boundary up here in the north. And this also, as the eagle-eyed members will notice, pairs two incumbents in that sort of Far Heights district. Then District 4 comes along and runs from I-25 in the west to Juan Tabo in the east, taking in, this is Academy Acres, Arroyo del Oso. I also wanted to mention, just to orient us, this is Albuquerque Academy and Tanawan. That would all be in District 8 under Concept D. But Arroyo del Oso, Academy Acres would be in District 4. under concept D, and then the southern boundary running from Comanche to Carlisle, and then Candelaria, all the way to Wantabo. And then District 7 sort of takes the rest of it from, this is Lomas, Candelaria again, and then comes down Wyoming to take these neighborhoods here around East Central. So this is Los Altos Golf Course. This is where that Walmart and Sam's Club is. All of that would be in District 7 under Concept D. And here again, because this is so similar to Concept A, we have those 3 majority minority districts, the majority Hispanic voting age population districts in District 1, 2, and 3. And that is Concept D. Again, just really a opportunity to rethink what's happening on the east side of the city. And then the final conceptual plan that we've put together is Concept E. And the purpose of Concept E was based on discussions that we had last redistricting cycle, which is, what would it look like to split downtown between 2 districts? And so to sort of preempt that question, we have a conceptual plan that does split downtown, and that's Concept E. So what we've done here is the west side looks really similar to Concept A in District 1 and District 2. District 3 looks really similar to Concept A. The difference is that we have District 2 crossing the river again to Coors north of Central and south of I-40, but also south of Central, not quite to Old Coors. So just a little bit of crossing the river south of Central. Again, the sitting incumbent for District 3 remains in District 3 under Concept D. But what we can see here is that District 6 comes in and takes sort of the southern half of downtown, split essentially at Central. We have some sort of precinct issues here, which is why it's not a straight line. But it's mostly at Central. The country club area is in District 2 under Concept E, and the zoo is in District 6 under Concept E. We also see District 6 taking all of Morelos, all of East San Jose, crossing the river to, or crossing I-25 to the county line here. So District 2, because it's losing all of that population south of Central, essentially, pushes up into the north, not quite as far as we saw it in Concept D, but it goes up to Osuna, taking that that area with the movie theater and sort of those restaurants and all of that stuff into District 2. So moving up to Osuna in the north, and then here on the southern boundary of District 2, staying along Central to Carlisle. And this is really similar to the existing boundary of District 2, just coming in a little further to take the University of New Mexico main campus and some of that sort of university area to Carlisle. Currently has North Campus, would have North Campus under Concept E. This would pair the sitting incumbent in District 6 with the incumbent in District 2. So what ends up happening when we bring District 6 up into downtown is that basically all of the east side districts are sort of coming around in a clockwise manner to sort of suck up that population that District 6 is leaving behind by coming west into downtown. So we can see that happening in District 4. We already saw that District 2 is pushing north up into District 4. It's also coming north from District 7. So it's moving from Montgomery to Academy. Again, this is Arroyo del Oso here, moving from District 4 into District 7. It's also sort of doing that clockwise movement here into District 8. So this is Eubank and Wantabo to Montgomery and Wyoming. So this is Albuquerque Academy and Tanawon. So that's that neighborhood there. There's some apartments and things in here. So that would go into District 4 from District 8 under Concept E. District 8 is also sort of wheeling around, coming a little south and east. So rather than being held at Manal, the southern boundary is held at Indian School, and the western boundary moves from Eubank to Wyoming under Concept E. A similar thing happening with District 9, the northern boundary at Indian School, the eastern boundary at Wyoming. But we're still sort of maintaining the core of District 9 as a east central sort of Four Hills district. And then the eastern boundary of District 6 is held here at Wyoming. And again, the international district is whole in District 6. And here again, we have 3 majority Hispanic voting age population districts. The Hispanic voting age population in District 2 isn't super strong. It's at 50.9. But in District 1, it's 53.5. In District 3, it's 79.6. So, Madam Chair, those are all of the conceptual maps we prepared for you. I'm happy to take questions if the committee has any, or move on.
It's 7:20. The hour is late. I do want to give the public an opportunity to comment, and then I would like to perhaps after that, have you stand for questions unless someone has something pressing at this moment. So I see that one attendee has a hand raised for public comments. I'd like us to move on to public comment and come back to committee discussion after that. I did see one hand raised for public comment. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. Maureen Skolrat. Maureen, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Hi, my name is Maureen Scourin. I'm with Fair Albuquerque Redistricting. And first off, I'd like to commend everybody that's working on this. I think it's great progress so far from the committee and the city staff and research and polling. And I have a couple of requests. As far as the communications plan, if you would take the web page that the city has about redistricting and make a version of that in Spanish, I think that would be very helpful. And I think that would not be too arduous, I hope, just one page. And also for the concept maps that research and polling has proposed, there's metrics as far as the population, the race and ethnicity, but I'd also ask for the compactness scores. And if they could tell us the number of people that will be moved into a new district under each plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? We'll come back to answer those questions. I see that there are a couple of other people, but let's keep track of that particular question and we'll get back to it. Second public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Melissa Sanchez. Melissa, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Just want to first say thank you to Research and Polling for all the work that you have put into these concept maps. I would just like to oppose any map that put any incumbents together. And I am a West Side resident, so I do live in District 1, and I would also like to make sure that the Hispanic voters are protected in that district. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Cheryl Harris. Cheryl, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Harris. I live on the West Side, and I'm a member of the informal group Fair Albuquerque Redistricting. I'd like to, first of all, thank you for the amount of work that was put into those. It's a lot, and I liked some of the various concepts. I think it's Concept D, which changed the eastern half of the city quite a bit. I like the idea of a tramway corridor district because there's a lot of commonality, I think, in the geographical and physical part of the city with that alignment. And the older Northeast Heights goes east and west along that Lomas to, I think it was Montgomery corridor in District 7. I thought Concept D bears a lot of looking at again. In the concept maps on the west side, any of them, I would encourage you, if you can adjust the numbers so that the boundary between 1 and 3 is the freeway rather than central. There's a lot of community of interest that shops together at the El Mesquite Market and that shopping area on Central and 98th, I think it is. And it comes from both the north and the south. And it seems to me like there's more of a barrier with the freeway than there is with Central. So I think the freeway makes a good boundary between the north and the south there. I think you've done a great job. I strongly support 3 strong Hispanic districts, minority districts, as much as we can make them. So I think right now, concept C and D were the ones that I thought that appealed to me the best.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Last call for attendees. Please just raise your hand if you'd like to provide some public comment. Madam Chair, it looks like that will conclude public comments.
Thank you. I want to open it up for committee discussion. We will take into account all of those public comments. I do want to ask staff to look into the Spanish translations so that we can make sure that people have an opportunity to participate, that we are linguistically responsible. So I think what I'd like to do, and it's 7:26, but perhaps if we could go a little bit longer to have each committee member have the opportunity to say something about what you saw, and that we have an opportunity to take 2 weeks to look at these maps, to get information out to the public about what is there, and to hear back from them, that we can spend more time discussing them in the next meeting. So if we could poll and just go district by district to talk about what we liked and what we'd like to see different. Petra, if you want to call out.
Yes, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry. So starting with oh, thank you. With District 1, we have Victor Segura and Dan Aragon.
Madam Chair and fellow members, I guess my main concern is that people don't go and think that these are in concrete already. And so that we make sure that everybody understands these are only concepts, and that's all they are. And that until we have a chance to look at them and study them a little bit more, and I mean, I've been studying them for 2 days, but to give us a chance to study them a little bit more. And then, of course, my goal is to make sure that we have District R in place, so that if we want to manipulate some of the maps, we can manipulate them ourselves, and maybe come up with some different concepts. So that's all I have, my input.
Thank you.
District 2, Keith Romero and Joaquin Baca.
Good evening, all, Madam Chair, committee members. I just wanted a better understanding of this concept of contiguity. On some of the concept maps, I think like in B and C, there are some districts that are attributed both to district, or pockets, I should say, on the map that look to be sort of outlying, like islands attributed to C and or 2. And it looks like a road in one scenario or another is used to establish that contiguity. If that's the case, then why cannot Montano be used in a similar manner for the contiguity aspect of it?
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer that.
Go ahead.
So yes, you're absolutely right. There are islands, especially around what's currently District 3 in the South Valley. But those roads are already annexed by the city. And so there's existing road contiguity in the municipal boundaries, and the city has not annexed Montano or Paseo or whatever.
Thank you.
I have a question, Madam Chair. So when we talk about communities of interest, oftentimes that's geographic, Barelas, international, or in fact, the international district is brought up. Is research and polling, are you going to make that information, or what information are you using as those pockets of interest, and how is that being made available to everybody else to look at, including us?
Madam Chair, Member Baca, that's a great question. A lot of the sort of working knowledge that we have of those communities of interest have come from the hearings that we did with the state legislature. And when folks from Albuquerque would come in and talk about their communities of interest, we don't have anything sort of hard and fast written down. I think I appreciate the encouragement to be more transparent about sort of where and when we're thinking about communities of interest. I think that the districtor tool is going to be really useful. There's, as Michael showed, there's an option to draw whole plans, but there's also an option to just draw communities of interest. And so hopefully we could get some engagement from the public to let us know. And even if you all wanted to draw communities of interest or just sort of talk about it in committee discussion about, what communities you all would like to see us, hold inviolable. We're very happy to take all that feedback because, our sort of refrain is that communities of interest are in the eye of the beholder. And so we want to hear from as many beholders as possible and not just us. And so thank you for that.
Right. Okay. So then just a quick follow-up from a process perspective, when you say, as we draw maps, someone like me who's not going to take the time to draw a whole map, but who has some, I live downtown in Barelas. And looking at the concept E, I could see how Barelas was kind of drawn on. It's like, well, if there was some change or suggestion with that an email that can then be incorporated and discussed during meeting, or is it something that has to be done during meeting?
Madam Chair and Petra, please let me know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think, we'd be happy to take input from committee members over email or, or in meetings. In terms of members of the public, they are welcome to just use the comment portion of the website. But yeah, and Brian, also correct me if I'm wrong, but we are open to hearing from committee members and helping you all design maps that you can then bring to the rest of the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Just one. Oh, Petra, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the public will be submitting comments that we'll be sharing with the committee as a whole. And so for committee members to share, sorry for background noise. For committee members, I would encourage you to keep the discussions and directions of research and polling to the meetings, so that if, for example, a version of a map is created and the public kind of wonders, like, well, where did that come from? They're able to go back through the YouTube videos and say, oh, I remember they talked about it on, March 23rd. And so while we'll take comment in any form, I would encourage it to be at a meeting from a committee member.
And if I may just add, Madam Chair, to Member Baca's question, it's a good point about communities of interest. And sometimes, as Brittany said, communities of interest are the eyes of the beholder. So when we know there's a historic, traditional neighborhood that people are very concerned about, we then show that area different ways and different concepts to enable people to then say, well, gee, the best way to cross over into the west side is north of Central, or no, better south of Central. So what we do is, where we know there are differences of opinion in the community, we try to approach it in different perspectives to let you then tell us what you think is best. Similarly with the Heights, how we heard, should there really be a foothills district? Well, if there is, it has other implications. And that's where we thought the debate could begin.
Thank you.
District 3, Sharice Casada and Luis Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Petra, as you know, many of these concepts directly impact my district. I can tell you that 2 of the concepts completely eliminate my current incumbent from the district. And, she was voted in with a high approval rating. That worries me, as well as splitting up communities of interest, in my opinion. And I have I'm an eye of a beholder. There's there are distinct differences in these communities as you cross the river. And I'd like to know, is there any language documented or any verbiage stated anywhere that typically the river was considered or is considered the natural boundary? Because when I look at the boundary, I look to the river and the freeway typically. And then my other question is, I guess, and I'm not sure, maybe this is just my naiveness, but is there any room for discussion to talk about possibly eliminating one of the East Side districts since they're underpopulated? Do we need all of them? Perhaps there's an incumbent that isn't seeking re-election that we can look at, their district. Also, my alternate, Luis Hernandez, if you have anything to add.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, committee members, I stand with committee member Quesada. There's a lot of things to consider. When we look at the principles of redistricting, who's to say which principle takes precedent over the other, right? While we want to maintain equal population, how do we really discern the communities of interest? And again, eye of the beholder, right? But if you really look at the communities and you really engage and drill down in the communities, these, one of the public comment was that, there's more community of interest between I-40 and Central than there is, and splitting that up and making that part of a different district. And so we have to be mindful of that, and we have to really look at, some alternatives, rather than displacing some of these communities of interest. And I think that's really important, as we look at this. And again, of these 5 principles, which one supersedes the next? And so I think that we really ought to take a hard look at that and maybe look at some other lines, maybe the I-40, I-25 as those areas, and look at how we can really make sense or better alignment of the districts as they pertain to compactfulness and these communities of interest. And so I would strongly support anything that is along those lines. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I can speak a little bit to that. So in terms of the river being a natural boundary, absolutely, we heard that a lot in the state redistricting. The issue is that, to Member Hernandez's point, there are sort of hierarchies of these principles. We sort of have to be within plus or minus 5% of that ideal population. We have to have congruent districts, or these aren't legal districts. And as we talked about, the problem really is about how much extra population there is on the west side. And last redistricting, there just happened to be exactly the right amount of population that we were able to use the river as a boundary to those 3 west side districts. But we have to cross the river to get to that equal population and make these legal districts. And then in terms of eliminating a district, my understanding is that that's a charter issue that sets the number of districts. Brian, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Madam Chair, it was Ms. Quesada's thought about eliminating a district, meaning that instead of there being 3 and 6, east and west, west and east, that it would go to 4 and 5, west and east. Was that what your question was about? Eliminating a west side district? So we still have 9 total. It would just be the distribution would shift.
Madam Chair, Petra, no, my question was, I would like to keep my current west side districts intact, and instead of carving out a large portion of District 3, perhaps we could eliminate an East Side district from a district that maybe an incumbent isn't currently seeking re-election. And then those East Side districts can then expand and absorb that one. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm going to try anything and everything I can to save my communities.
Madam Chair, if I may. Well, and as we see, we do have some plans here where District 3 stays the same and other plans where it stays almost the same, but then there are plans where it does not. As to the east side of the river, if you will, the Rio Grande, to get into the concept of eliminating a seat there, it's only short 23% of one city council district. It's not as if it's short 80% where we can eliminate a district. Just by pairing two people doesn't eliminate a district. There is enough population for almost 6 districts. It's short about 14,000. Need to get that 14,000 from the west side to the east side. Hopefully that we've given you food for thought for whether that's best to happen north of Central, in which case District 3 stays the same, or south of Central, in which case there's major differences. And so this, I think this debate is very helpful to us.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I wasn't sure if we were moving on to District 4 or not, but
I think we should move on.
Okay. District 4, this evening, Rebecca Latham wasn't able to join us, so we have Mark Reynolds for District 4.
Thank you, committee all, and Madam Chair and Research Polling for all the work you've done. And this is more of a point of process or a point of order. When I started looking at all the maps and then looking at the city councilors that were on those districts, and to the point of Committee Member Quesada, is that under concept A, nothing changed. So all the councilors kept their seats. When you went to B, Pena was no longer a councilor. C, Pena is no longer a councilor. D, Brooke is no longer a councilor, and E, Davis is no longer a councilor. So my question is on the point of order, a point of process, or is it even legal that without going into a special election and the cost of doing a special election, how much does this weigh on this redistricting process to keep those where they live in those districts, so that you don't have to have a special election or not have somebody representing your district because of what is decided? And eventually this goes to the city council, who's going to make that final decision. But I'm new to this. My first one, I wasn't on the first to the 10 year ago. What is there any precedents or anything to keep from going to a special election or something happening because of something happening to that turn? That's my question to Brian, I guess.
Madam Chair, Member Reynolds, not a lawyer, but been doing this 40 years. This comes up a lot. A councilor is elected to a district for 4 years to represent the district from which they were elected. When in redistricting, they are somehow districted out of their district, that wouldn't even take effect to the November 2023 election to take account for actually till 2024, January 24, when the new people take office. But then in some circumstances, it could leave 2 years where you have an awkward situation where a person's still supposed to represent the district from which they were elected for 4 years, but they find themselves outside that district.
Okay.
But there aren't special elections. It just creates awkward situations. Okay. Districts 4 and 8, they're up at the same time because they're even numbered districts. Districts 1 and 2 are staggered, and it does create a more confusing situation for the voters. And that could be something that you take into account to weigh the merits of whether there would be this awkward situation. It did happen 10 years ago. Councillor Benson was out of his district. And you can even change the numbers of the districts when one comes up for office sooner than the other. But it creates more problems where you have both an odd number and an even number district as compared to 4 and 8, where you would both be up at the same time and the person would have to decide whether to move back into their old district or not.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Mr. Bryant. And to committee member Quesada, to the point of District 3 with Pena just getting elected, is something to consider, right? It's just that where they are in this process. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Right. And sometimes people retire, or we know they're not running again, and so it becomes less of a problem. And those are all the things that we like to know if they in fact will. But yeah, this is a big issue.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
District 5, we don't have Mr. Steve Smother on tonight, but we do have Robert Aragon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, I remember 40 years ago when we did our first redistricting in the legislature. It's been a long time. Your statement of the summary of the law in regards to what happens with sitting incumbents is a correct statement of the law. I just suggest that these concepts are exactly that. They're concepts. As we work through these concepts, we'll have an opportunity to nip and tuck, if you would, where appropriate, keeping in mind the principles outlined by the Supreme Court that we have to stay within those concepts. But these are wonderful working documents that we can use as we move forward as a committee, making recommendations and changes as the law allows and that we deem appropriate as a body. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
District 6, Catherine Gill and Rosendo Nahad.
I'm going to defer to Rosendo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Petra. I'd like to thank the research and polling for sure for all the work done. This is the first opportunity that I've had to be a part of this committee. Really looking forward to it. The concepts did look very interesting, and I really do like the idea of the mapping platform, District R, and seeing what it is and that we could do and maneuver with that stuff, and what ideas we could come up with in the next 2 weeks, and see the best way possible to make it to where it's least effective on everybody on their current position seats and best cost effective to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
District 7, Travis Kellerman and Heather Bergman.
Director Morris. Madam Chair, thanks for leading this. And I really feel, I want to acknowledge research and polling. Again, Cheryl Harris and other members have stated how much work has gone into this. As identified before by Brittany, I want to introduce 2 new data layers, and it would be 2 new maps. Formally request that research and polling create these maps and the associated statistics so we can review them before the next meeting. First would be an income-based map of the city. It could use census tract data, or if there's other more appropriate data, I defer to research and polling's expertise on that. Showing at that level of census tract at least what districts have what kind of income distributions, with a color gradation to easily visualize and see where those distributions lie. And then also the percentages, the statistic percentages per district. So it would be for current districts and for each scenario, just the statistic percentages for those. The first would be income based, and the second would be voter turnout and actual voting behavior. So mapping both of those, 2 new maps, statistics attached to current districts and future scenario districts, the A through E that have been proposed. I'd like to introduce those and formally request research and polling create those before the next meeting. Madam Chair, if you believe that needs a committee vote,
Yeah.
make a motion.
Well, I just wanted to find out if that can happen if you turn on layers on the map, the SBI index.
Sure. Yeah. So, Madam Chair, we already have linked the SBI index to these maps, and so we'd be happy to show them at any point. I know we're getting late now, so that's definitely available. My concern is, and the voter participation statistics, I think, you know, you all are prohibited from looking at voter registration data and partisan data, but I think just turnout is, I want to double check with staff to make sure that that's acceptable for you all to look at, and that may require a discussion among us, and we may get back to you on that. But in terms of the statistics by district, because the census tracks, that social vulnerability index is at the tract level, and most of the good income data that we will have is at the tract level, and that doesn't align perfectly with precincts or districts. And so I hesitate to give you district specific statistics because there's going to be a lot of noise because those boundaries don't match up. I'm very happy, again, you know, we've already linked it up to show you the sort of imagery and the geocoded tracks, and, you know, and looking at the different levels of that. But in terms of like an actual statistic for each district, I would be hesitant to do that because I'm not sure how meaningful that is based on the boundary issues.
And thanks for that, Brittany. Is there, and I think this might be an open thing to have for discussion later or in between. If there's any other data sources or other ways you think we might be able to determine that or represent that by district, that would be helpful.
Absolutely, Madam Chair and Member Kellerman. I've definitely put my thinking cap on, but getting granular at that sort of precinct level to then build up to districts is going to be tough.
I would like to, you know, it's something that I know we want to figure out, like, are we creating, you know, districts that have more or less poverty, and the SVI index is a way to do that. But if you're telling us it doesn't track to precincts, and I hear that you're saying it's tough, if there is, you know, can you tell us if you can go back and look at other ways that you could bring back to the next committee meeting to tell us, like, here's how we might solve for that. And then I'll ask you, Member Kellerman, if that would satisfy you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. And however we can arrive at something that is useful to consider that layer of demographic information and socioeconomic data, that's what I'd like the committee to be able to see. So however we can represent that, and especially as we consider these scenarios, I don't want to create a bunch of new work and a lot of other frenzy for research and polling, but I do think there's probably some way to easily represent some of that and at least gather where those pockets lie, both of wealth and poverty and income distribution across the city.
Madam Chair and Brittany, if we color coded at the tract level and overlaid the city council districts, even if that tract went beyond the district boundary, it would still provide us some good insights, right? It would have some noise in it, but
absolutely no. And I think, and we absolutely have the capacity to do that visually. And I would ask Madam Chair if we could maybe have some time on the agenda at the next meeting to show that for each of the concepts, to show that sort of that layer, if that's something the committee's interested in. My only concern is with having an actual statistic, but we can absolutely look at the visualization all day, and I think that'll be meaningful.
And I do think that that's something that we can already do, Member Kellerman, just by turning on some layers. So I don't think we need the committee to vote on it, but if that satisfies you, then we'll ask that it be done for the next meeting.
That's very satisfying. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on.
District 8, David Buchholz.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. First, I want to add my gratitude to the staff and to our advisors on the very good and very difficult work that they've done to present all of this to us today. We have a lot that we need to digest. I also want to reiterate the comments that have been made that notwithstanding all the very good work that they've done, they are concepts, and it is our job, the voting members, to come up with final resolution, and that we need to have a hard job in front of us to get that done. I don't want to say too much today, but I do want to give you some idea of what I've been reflecting on and my thinking on it. I think we actually have two pieces of the job we have to do. The first piece is we're compelled to do one job. The demographics of our city have changed in a way that have our districts now imbalanced, if you will, a little, some in regard to population. We are compelled to fix the districts to make those changes, and we have to do that work. And we have no choice but to do that work. The second part is a little more challenging and uncertain to me, and that is, do we want to go beyond that work to do more significant changes to our district? And my sense will be, from my perspective, that I start out not so much as to say skeptical, but I will be looking for significantly more presentation and evidence in regard to change. And when I say more significant evidence and presentation in regard to change, I include in that, in my own mind, change that puts incumbents in a difficult position. So I'm not making any decisions yet, and I know we have a lot of work to do. But in going into this, that's the kind of thinking that I'll be doing. Work that we must do and work that we could do, taking into account that change will have to be presented in a more compelling way to me to make me think in that direction.
Thank you.
And last of all, District 9, Kenneth Pascoe and Thomas Stull.
Again, lots of great work that went into this. A couple of questions. Okay, I downloaded the PDF maps and took a look at those before. Is it possible for a future version of the maps to include the existing district lines on the same map as the new ones, like we showed in the presentation? I think that'd be a lot easier for us to understand the changes. And then a couple of specific points. Looking at concept A, I noticed that District 8 was still at minus 4.48%. So it's within the 5%, but it's just barely within the 5%. And a little bit more movement of population could get it closer to zero, and avoid having the district in 10 years be far out of bounds again based on future population changes. Just a thought. Looked at concept B, I noticed that the way District 2 crossed the river, it was contiguous, but kind of barely contiguous. Like there was just a little bit of space along Central, on the south side of Central, joining those. And so that was, it seemed, I don't know, like it wasn't really meeting the concept of contiguity. So just a few nitpicks about these, but we'll all have to look at these districts a lot more carefully to see what's good and bad about them. And I reiterate, if we can avoid cutting counselors out of their districts, is probably a good thing. Not a hard requirement, but it seems like a good thing. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Member Stoll, yeah, I think a lot of good territory was covered tonight as far as that goes. Just excellent research has gone into this. What I would say is with the 5 different concepts that we've looked at tonight, we have gone from with the concept A, which is probably the easiest and most doable concept, to, as you look at the other concepts, going down to D and E being some of the concepts with the most impact. When you look at, rather than just separate districts, looking at the city as a whole. And I think that's what we've got to do, is we've got to look at the city as a whole and what the impact is to every district. And so as we look at these, what I would like to have is a conversation when we get together next and look at the impacts of the baseline, and then work our way to the more complex and more eloquent pictures that have been established for us tonight. And I think that baseline is probably concept A. And with concept A, We don't have a single counselor that is cut out of the picture, but what are the impacts of concept A to each of the districts? And then we can work our way from that baseline to each of the other concepts, and what are the impacts and how can we integrate those, and what are the pluses and the minuses of each of those. But I think first off, let's establish a baseline and then work our way to the more complex and more eloquent pictures that were developed for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As your chair, I'll just say everything that everybody said, we want to incorporate. We recognize that what we're doing is for the entire city. It's not a them versus us. It's a we situation. What do we need to do that is best for the city of Albuquerque? I don't feel comfortable with 22 people making a decision about what should happen for the entire city. I think our work is to make this process relatable for the entire constituencies, and we must do a really good job of making this a relatable process for the citizenry of the city of Albuquerque to know that this process is about you. It's about one person, one vote, and how we get there. So what we've done today, I think, allows the public to participate with Districtor, and we need to make sure they know about it. I think that's usually what happens in government, is that we do great things and then no one knows of it. So we want to make sure that we figure out a way to get the information out to the communities and constituencies that we have pledged to serve, that we want to look at the principles of redistricting. We want to look at those things that we shall do, as Member Buckholz talked about, the things that we may do and the things that we may not do. So as we keep those at the forefront of our thinking, I think we can have a really wonderful process that where there is no animus, but it's about doing what's best for the city. I want to thank the staff and research and polling for really what is a very good start. What I would ask the staff to do before the next meeting and as we're developing the new agenda is to really take a really strong look at how we bullet point these minutes so that people can see exactly what it is we talked about today and issues. And also, I know that we have streamed this on YouTube. We can get a transcript from YouTube so that people can actually read through the transcript while they're looking at the maps and be able to make some sense of what the nuances are for the changes in each one of those concepts. So I'd like us to do a little extra work, which is different than what we normally do, so that when I present it to a regular person in the public who's not living and breathing this every day, that they can understand it. I want to thank you so much for, saying this is by Topgolf. That's what the public needs to know. Tell us, where the boundaries are and how this is going to change for the better, we hope, how we live in the city of Albuquerque and how we make it better, and that we are, as we say, one Albuquerque. So that's all I have. If there is no other discussion, we are far past our time. We will try to maintain our time in the future so that we can get out of here at 7:30 and go eat dinner and do what we need to do. But this is very important. We take it very seriously. Committee members, please go do your work. Please talk to members in your communities and ask them to show up. At this next process, we had 10 people. We need the public to show up in order for this process to be really effective. So with that, if there is nothing else, I would.
And I'm sure there's 2 hands that are up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who would like to say something else?
Madam Chair, committee members,
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, but please go right ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to add, as we move forward in this process and as we narrow down some of these conceptual maps, as we're looking at them a little bit further, I would just implore committee members, perhaps on their own time, drive through these districts, look at some of the changes that are being proposed. And I think I'm a visual person, so it's a lot, it holds more significance to actually see these neighborhoods that we're discussing versus looking at a map, because it's theoretical. You're drawing theoretical lines on a map. And I would just implore you just to take a drive through some of these districts that we're discussing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Member Segura, I believe.
Madam Chair, I never got an answer to my question. When will District R be available?
Madam Chair, Michael?
Madam Chair, and Member Segura, the districtor has told us 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, they should have it up and running. But that was contingent upon, first of all, the committee giving approval to do so. And so now that we have official approval from the committee, then we will get districtor the information they need. And they said 2 weeks maximum. So hopefully prior to the next meeting.
And that sounds like it's going to be just prior to the next meeting, correct? So not a whole lot of time.
Oh, yeah, Madam Chair, it could be just prior.
Madam Chair, Michael, hopefully you can push them a little bit. We're ready to start now.
I think it gives us an opportunity to let the public know that it's coming and for them to start studying the map and for us to have a robust discussion in the next meeting about what the homework that we've done. Is there any other comment? Given that, thank you again to city staff and to Research and Polling, to all the committee members. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
Been moved in second that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Let's go home. Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.
Wow.
Aye.